Hello, friends, and welcome to season two, Inclusion Starts Now podcast. Did I know it was going to be a season two? No. Are we here? Yes, we are. But right now, we are going to talk to Chloe. Thank you so much for being here, Chloe. Um, Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm Chloe Bradley. I'm a massage therapist, originally from California, but currently in Vancouver, Washington. And I've been on quite a journey, quite a mental health journey, starting around puberty, but I have finally hit the point in my life where I feel like I have figured out what is going on and like I've know what I need and I'm able to get it and I'm really thriving. So I'm really passionate about kind of sharing that journey with other people to help other neurodivergent people find their way to that place.
Well, I am so excited to talk to you because I do feel like it is very common that women don't get diagnosed. That the autistic traits or like behaviors in women just they don't get talked about enough. And I think a lot of women mask their behaviors. So I get yeah. So what were you were saying that you really felt like puberty? That was like the time that it started getting more challenging. What happened?
Yeah. So I was a pretty happy kid. I didn't feel like I struggled a lot as a kid. And then around, junior high and high school, things just started getting a lot harder for me. And I kind of assumed that it was hard for everybody, and that I, for whatever reason, just wasn't able to keep up like everyone else could. Um, I think kind of the first thing that I could really notice was in junior high, I stopped running. I stopped enjoying running. I started skipping track practice and just wanting to sit alone in the classroom during that time instead. Um, and then high school, I was really active. I did dance classes. I participated in extracurricular curriculars. I was, tried to be a really, really good student, but I was just couldn't keep up. I was just tired. I didn't have the energy to do things. And so, of course, that ended up being diagnosed as depression and treated as depression. Um, so it was my senior year of high school that I finally was like, okay, something's not right here. Like I love everything about my life. I have all of these great things going on and I'm still not happy. I'm not fully engaged. I was struggling in my favorite classes, the classes I should really be thriving in. So I finally asked to go see a therapist and was prescribed Prozac, and that helped immediately. I started thriving again in school and had energy and felt great. Went away to college, and within a year, I was crashed down into depression again. And so they just upped my dosage of Prozac. They were like, this worked before, so we'll do it again. And so I would get better and thrive again and then crash again. And I just did that over and over again throughout college. Until finally I was like, I feel like I'm noticing a lot of other things. My grandma is bipolar. I think maybe I might be bipolar. So then I was diagnosed as bipolar type 2, which is just experiencing hypomania and never full blown mania, but experiencing deeper depressions. So they switched up my medication, and I had like some of the worst depressions of my life, but like got up out of that shortly after college, and then spent about 7 years assuming I was bipolar and that I needed to be on medication to maintain my mental health, but never quite feeling like I was fully doing all of the things, never feeling like I was fully experiencing life the way that everyone else was. Like I was still struggling to get enough sleep. I was still struggling to feed myself. I was supporting myself as a massage therapist, but didn't have energy for anything else outside of work. So it just felt like something wasn't quite right. And so I would talk to my doctors about it and be like, I feel like maybe there's still like some lingering depression. Like I don't really know what's going on. So of course they would just increase my medication. Like, we'll just give you a little bit more of those meds. And so it wasn't until just a couple years ago that I finally autism, like, oh, I'm autistic.
Okay, so before autism, during this whole time when they're like increasing the medicine for depression, like were they ever trying to also give you like other ways to support you mentally, like or emotionally? Like were they trying to figure out like, okay, you didn't like you stopped running, like, trying to figure out why you stopped running? Like there was just like no talk. It was kind of like, yep, depression, here you go.
It was it was always blamed on the depression. And insomnia is something I have struggled with for forever. Like I slept very little in high school and they always said, "Oh, we'll just fix your depression and then your insomnia will be fixed." And same with my appetite issues and my food issues. They're like, "We'll just fix your depression and just keep trying. Just keep trying," is what I was told over and over again. And that was what was cycling me into burnout over and over again because I knew like you have to get enough sleep, you have to eat enough, you have to exercise, you have to like, enjoy like hobbies and stuff. So I have so many lists I've made throughout my life of like go to bed on time, eat 3 meals a day. It's the same list that I was making over and over again. And I just was trying and trying and trying and trying to achieve what I now understand are like neurotypical expectations. And so constantly pushing myself to try to achieve neurotypical expectations is what kept putting me back into burnout over and over again.
Yeah, I love that word, neurotypical expectations. I think that is, I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with. And then, oh, and I wanted to ask, so like, so you found, are you the one who found autism? Like, you were the one that was like, okay, can we rethink this and look into like autism?
Yeah, so I don't technically have a diagnosis. Um, I did figure it out myself. Well, it was actually a friend. I was hanging out with a friend who had discovered that she was autistic. And so she was telling me all about it. And I feel like she was kind of giving me the nudge, nudge, like she suspected it about me as well. But she didn't come out and say it. And we just like, we went to sit on some chairs and one of them was very, very creaky. And she checked in with me like, is like the sound going to bother you? Or are you going to be okay with that? And it was this moment where I was like, wait a second, like she was just talking about how she's autistic and sounds bother her. And she remembered that about me, that like I am also sensitive to sounds. And it was this moment of like being seen in a way that I didn't know I needed to be seen. And it was just this moment of like, wait, me? Like I could be autistic and I didn't know very much about autism at the time. It had literally never occurred to me.
And when was this? Like, how long ago was this?
This was winter of 2018. So going into 2019 was when I spent pretty much all of 2019 with this just in the back of my head, like, am I maybe autistic? Am I maybe like what? And so following a lot of autistic people online and learning so much more about what autism is, because I had no idea. I had, that very limited idea of what autism was. One of the things that I thought I knew about autism was that autistic people take things too literally. And I'm a writer, so I love metaphors. So I was always like, well, that can't be me because I love metaphors and I'm really good at metaphors. And I think that's one of my funniest autistic traits is that I took that autistic trait too literally because there are so many ways in my life that I take things way too literally and just did not realize it.
That is like such a perfect example of like, oh, well, that can't be me because I love this. Like that, what a cycle to go through. So, how has getting the diagnosis now, or even though it's not technically formally, which again, I feel like this is really common for a lot of people that they take, and when I asked on Instagram, I asked people like, what tests have they taken online? And I had so many people respond being like, can you please share the answers? Like, so many people, I think, struggle with feeling that they're like not meeting those expectations. And they're just like, why can't I do this? So I guess because of that, how has the diagnosis kind of helped you now?
It's been quite a journey. I kind of figured it out, and then 2020 happened, and like I had just figured out all of these things that I needed. And then all of that shifted with the pandemic, whereas like I need alone time, and I am now living in a house with four other people who never go anywhere. Um, which was so challenging and frustrating to be like, I know what I need, and now I can't get it. So I sure enough, went into burnout by the end of 2020, 2021. My husband and I finally moved out on our own. 2021 was the year that I said to him, I think I might be disabled. And he looked at me and he was like, yeah, you think?
Yeah.
Like, yes, yes, we know this. You're definitely, my disability is more of a dynamic disability, but it doesn't fit into what most people think of as being disabled. But recognizing that about myself changed everything for me. And so 2021, I said to my husband, I was like, I just need to recover. Like, I need to do as little as possible. And he was like, okay, you can get a minimum wage job and just earn this, just work this many hours and we'll be fine. And you don't have to do anything else. And so he took care of everything else in our life so that I could like slowly come back to myself and like come out of burnout, and like the brain fog finally cleared, and like I started having the desire to go back into my passions again. And yeah, huge game changer. And I was just working a retail job, and so that was kind of my first experience asking for accommodations and stuff like that. Very disheartening. I could rail against employment in this country for hours because, um, you know, it's it's it, one of the hard things for me with being autistic and asking for accommodations for myself is a lot of people I feel like look at it like, oh, that's not a need, that's really more of a preference, you know? Like when I was working retail and the register had this beeping noise that was so loud. It was so loud. And I was like, I can't, this is intolerable. Please, can you turn the volume down on this beep? I am not the only person this bothers. Like customers complain about it too. And finally got a manager who turned the beeping down, and that like changed my experience so much, like made it so that I could work longer and do more. Um, and so it feels a little precious to be like, oh, I just need the lights a little lower. Can you just turn the music down? You know, like I'm just like this special little creature that just needs everything perfect for me. But I very much believe that everybody, neurotypical people as well, deserve to have their preferences acknowledged and met. That like everything I'm asking for myself is because I'm autistic and because I'm disabled. But I also believe that everybody who is not disabled deserves those things too.
Yes. And I think a lot of like the ADA laws that have like come out over time, like getting slopes on driveways or on curbs like before crosswalks, that happened because of people who like used wheelchairs or walkers. And then after they did it, it was like moms who or parents who have strollers and like people who are moving packages. Like so many other people benefited from it, but because like they weren't the like they people with strollers like could get around it, but it just like made life so much easier. And there's a lot of things out there that I'm like, you know, a lot of these accommodations can benefit so many more people. And what I also think is funny is that like disability is something that like most people will have a disability at some point in their life. I mean, most like I want to say everyone, but I'm sure there's always that one person who's going to be like, it's not me. Like accommodations and like supporting each other, like isn't that the point of like a community and like building those relationships? And like that's the point. Like it's funny that I feel so just funny sometimes that I'm like arguing with people on the internet when I'm like, aren't we like all just trying to like get along and like live this live this life together? And I have another question. So when you like brought it up to your husband and you were like, I'm disabled, and he was like, well, yeah, duh. And your other friend who also tried to like nudge you towards it, like, do you feel like if at any point like in high school, college, if someone was like, yeah, you're autistic, like, that's it, get kind of thing. How do you think you would have handled it? Do you think that would have been helpful?
I mean, if someone had presented it to me and like explained what autism can look like, and then been like, "Hello, like look in the mirror," I that would have been immensely helpful to me. I think if someone had just said to high school Chloe, like, "You're autistic," I would have been like, "What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense." But if it had been explained to me, like these are the traits, like these things that you struggle with, like it's not a character flaw, it's just how your brain works. Um, and that would have been such a huge game changer. Like, I feel like I lost so much time of my life to going into burnout and just wondering why. Like, I didn't understand why it kept happening to me. And that's what, made me suicidal multiple times was just like, I keep trying and I keep ending up here and I just don't understand. Like, I can't keep doing this over and over again, trying and trying and trying and ending up in the same place. It would have removed a lot of that self-criticism and kind of self-loathing that I dealt with when dealing with all of those struggles. Um, I think it would have been hard for me to get the accommodations that I needed because I was such an ambitious student. Um, like waking up early in the morning is not good for me. I don't do that anymore. But I loved like all the good classes were early morning in high school. So I don't think I would have given those up, even if I had known that I needed to be asleep at 6 a.m. and not going to school that early.
I was about to ask, what do you feel like your neurodivergent expectations are now, like for yourself?
I have some pretty firm boundaries around my time. I don't do much before noon because waking up early doesn't work well for my brain at all. Um, Technically, I know that a boundary for me is I should only be working 4 days a week. I've been pushing that a lot this year because I'm trying to get my own business off the ground. But just knowing, like, oh, I can see that I've worked 5 or 6 days this week, so I really need to protect that one day off. Or being able to say to my husband, like, look, I've worked too many days this week, so we need to do takeout. I can't cook this week, you know? Um, and I actually, this last fall and winter, I knew that I was going to put myself into burnout. And so I was able to like prepare and schedule several weeks off at the end of the year so that I could kind of catch myself before that burnout got really bad and bounce back from it so much faster than I ever have.
That is so great. And I really feel like this is a lot of just, like kind of having this diagnosis and like just having it kind of be a part of your identity helps you kind of like okay your own boundaries. Kind of like what you said about preferences too, of like, can we dim the lights or something? Can we do this? Like, um, I think that is important for everyone to feel like they can have a safe place to like go somewhere and like being able to access everything the way that is like most comfortable for them. And yeah, and I mean, I love when like movie theaters or when they do things where it's like this is going to be like a sensory friendly um, activity because it is impossible to 100% please everyone all the time at every event. But there are so many ways of like wearing headphones. And have you seen those new headphones that are, I think they're called Loop or something? And they're just like noise canceling and they're so small. So you don't even have to wear like the big bulky ones. And I'm just like such an easy accommodation for everyone to like feel included with, what's going on. And I really feel like getting a diagnosis. I do know quite a few families that really mourn getting diagnoses that just that they feel like disability is this bad word and they're like, no, I'm not disabled. We don't need any help. It's fine. And it's like, the help is like we all need help sometimes. Like don't view it as such as negative thing. It's like there are resources out there now to support you. And actually, do you feel like do you notice other people having autistic traits and like ever be like, hey, let me tell you my story?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's so funny. Like, there's gaydar, how queer people can spot other queer people. And that is so true. Once you recognize your own autism, it is, you see it in other people. You're like, are you also, do you know yet about your brain? Or are we gonna like go on a journey together? So yeah, I do feel like I'm pretty good at spotting other autistic people these days.
That is great. I see it a lot more with adults. The feeling of masking, actually, I feel like masking is something I can now spot way easier than I ever used to. Because, like, working with kids, I mean, I was in a special ed classroom. So it was like the kids in there all knew that you know, they were apart from all their peers. Like, they knew that they were in a separate classroom. But, like, adults, especially adults who have, like, probably struggled throughout their life feeling comfortable in situations, being able to like connect with people and like form relationships or whatever, like were the barriers. And then like just masking in general. I feel like I went off on some tangent and I lost where I was going with that. But
Just that you can spot masking in adults now.
yes. So do you feel like you were masking and do you feel like you still or and if yes, do you feel like you still mask today?
That's a great question. I've always, as a kid, I identified as weird. Like I knew I was different. Um, and so being different from other people wasn't something that I tried to hide a ton. But I think I also tried to fit in and definitely did the masking of like when I'm uncomfortable, having to cover that up and having to tolerate a social situation that is very uncomfortable for me. Um, so I'm sure that I mask. I don't think it's a conscious thing that I do. Um, and I know a lot of autistic people go on like an unmasking journey where they feel like they've been masking their autism like 24/7 and they have to really let that go. And so I don't feel like I had to do that as much because with the people who are close to me, I'm unmasked all the time. I think I think I've actually noticed that like when I was dating my husband, who is allegedly also autistic. He says I have to say allegedly because he likes to deny it all the time. But I could be myself around him in a way that I couldn't with anybody else. And I didn't know why. Like, I didn't know what was going on with why we clicked so well. But I would spend like an intensive amount of time with him and then go spend time with my family and realize that I was different. Like, that the way I behaved around him and just totally my normal self, I would have to kind of, I guess, mask again around my family in ways that I hadn't even realized that I was masking around my family.
Yeah. Would he ever call you out on it? Like you guys would leave your family and he would be like,
No,
why are you acting different? What happened?
no, I have the autism that's like, I don't care what people think of me. He has the autism where he still is very much trying to abide by social norms. So he
Yeah.
probably does a lot more masking than I do and is more okay with that. Like, he would rather people perceive us as normal than notice how weird and quirky we are.
The word normal, because I feel like that totally gets used a lot. I mean, I know it's been interesting with my two kids. Well, especially the one who's 3.5 and talking and categorizing everything and trying to figure out the world and how everything works. Um, she says normal a lot, and as like the person working in the like in special education. I've always tried not to say normal, but it's like kind of interesting now that she's like, no, I don't want that dress. I just want the normal dress. And I'm like, oh, what's
Mm.
the normal dress? Like, what does that mean?
Hmm.
Um, but I do think, that like I think now I've been viewing normal as like the social norm that people like expect of neurotypical expectations. Like that is what is normal to people. Um, but I actually feel like a lot more people like kind of mask and try to fit into this like unrealistic standard that is for some that is so normalized that
Yep.
like people think is normal. And like I love when celebrities come out and they're like, yeah, I'm autistic, and you're like, good, like let's let's talk about it and talk about like how it can look so different on so many people.
Hmm.
But I feel like what your husband is feeling is something that a lot of autistic people feel, that they're like, I just want to look normal. I just want to fit in. I just want to, do my job, make friends, and then I'll go home and do what I want to do. Like, but it's like, I don't, I guess it kind of feels like people feel like that means there's like a lot of struggling. But I would think that if I was masking a lot, I would feel like that was a struggle. I would think that would be
Yeah,
interesting.
it is exhausting. It is definitely exhausting. Yep.
Do you feel like anyone in your family is autistic? We don't need to say it if you don't want to.
It's so interesting because it's clearly genetic, you know? Like we know that.
Yeah.
I think my grandpa was almost definitely autistic. He died when I was like just out of high school, so I never got to know him really as an adult, especially not as an adult with this understanding of autism.
Yeah.
Um, but he hated loud noises. Like if you slammed a cabinet, he was going to be pretty grumpy about that. He had a lot of little quirks that, looking back, I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he was autistic. And I
Yeah.
think at least one of my aunts is autistic. I'm not sure about my parents. My mom took the RADS R test that I sent you, the self-test for autism,
Yeah.
and she scored like zero, like no autism detected.
Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you mask during the test? I should have taken the test before. I really want to see
Um,
what you get.
I think it's interesting for anybody to take. Um, and if you are like heavily, heavily masked and like unaware of a lot of what you've been dealing with, it's probably possible to score neurotypical on it. But I think most autistic people, even autistic people who don't recognize their autism, are going to score pretty high on that test.
Oh, cool. Oh my gosh. I definitely should have taken it before. I'm going to take it now. And
Yeah,
when I post this, I'll share, I'll share my results because I am very interested. And I just want to get everyone now to take it that I
yeah,
suspect are autistic.
uh-huh.
'Cause, yeah, we do have some family members that, and what started it was that I noticed when the schedule changed and that he wasn't ready for it, it got him really mad. And
Hmm.
and I don't even think I thought about it for the first couple of years that I knew him, but then the closer that we became, the more I would be like, "Oh, that's like an interesting trait I haven't noticed before." And
Hmm.
he ended up saying that one of his like medical friends did end up giving him like a diagnosis, like an informal diagnosis. Um, but I don't know if he believes it or if it's like a joke to him. But there's definitely been times where I feel like I want to tell people, and then I don't think that they'd always take it well.
Yeah,
Because if I ever
yeah,
see a disability, I'm like, yeah, that's a disability. And they're like, no, well, it's not, it's not a disability. Like they're fine. I'm like, I didn't say they weren't fine. I just said
yeah.
that they have a disability. Like that's that's fine.
Yep, yep.
But yeah. Oh wow, we are almost to 30 minutes. So I thought that this might happen, that we were just gonna totally just keep talking, and I'm sure I can talk to you. I was gonna be like, go grab your husband, let's go talk for another 30 minutes and force him on here. Um, so is there anything else that you want to say to people? Because a lot of people that I feel like follow me, they're teachers, they're parents of kids with disabilities, um, and a lot of advocates, self-advocates, disabled people. So is there anything that you'd want to share about like, getting a diagnosis later in life or anything that that you wish your parents did or teachers did, anything like that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I feel like anytime we're talking about inclusion and how to make things better for marginalized groups that we're not a part of, our first instinct is to be like, give me the list of rules. Give me the words I'm supposed to use and the words I'm not supposed to use. I just want to get it all right and I want to follow the rules. Um, and that's like a great place to start for sure. But I feel like one of the best things that people can do to make the world more accommodating for autistic people is tuning into themselves and their own needs and like validating those things. Like if you're out in the world and you're like, my life would be 5% more comfortable if this small change was made, like acknowledging that as a valid thing and giving yourself that. Like, I feel like there's this baseline expectation of suffering. And when we ask for accommodations, people are like, oh, yeah, well, of course the lights are bright in here. Like, of course nobody likes that, but it's just how it has to be. Just put up with it. It's not that bad. And it's like, well, no, why can't we make things a little bit more comfortable for people? And that includes ourselves. So I think for individual people who want to make the world better for other people who are not like them, figuring out how to listen to your own needs and validate those is one of the best things that you can do. So, really, like unlearning diet culture, unlearning all of the messed up relationships we have with food, um, unlearning all of these expectations we have for our bodies and the correct way to have a body, and instead just being like, what's the correct way to have my own body? And then extending that compassion out to other people.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love all of that so much. And I love the unlearning because, yeah, that it's. I just started this new book, The Punishment by Rewards or Rewards, and one of
Mm,
the first, like the intro, it's like if something's happening and if something is so normalized in our society and nobody's questioning it, like that's like a red flag that we should always be like questioning and rethinking and being like, well, is this the best way that we're doing this? Like, well, why is everyone doing it and like the outcomes aren't good? Like, why aren't we rethinking this? And I I think it's just so important that we're constantly trying to like unlearn and like reevaluate and then like, learn again. And
yeah.
then, another couple years go by, unlearn it again. Like let's
Yep.
just keep learning. Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you everyone who is here and listening. If you have any questions, please let me know below. And inclusion starts with you, and I just want to help. Thank you. And thank you, Chloe, for being here. It really means so much to me that you are here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.